Hey guys, Brad Rhodes here. Welcome again to the live Zoom call. We do these every Thursday night at 6:30. Tonight's presentation is simply titled What Medicare Does Not Cover. You know, you always hear about all the things Medicare and these Medicare Advantage plans cover, all the bells and whistles, but rarely do you hear about what Medicare does not cover. And that's what I want to talk about. You know, I've been working with people going on Medicare for 34 years. I've done Medicare supplements, Medicare Advantage plans. We help people, of course, with prescription coverage. Um, Medicare, yes, it's a government program, and I know myself and others have criticized some government programs, but overall, Medicare has been very successful. But Medicare was never meant to cover everything. It simply can't. And so tonight we're talking about the four areas that Medicare does not cover. Um, and we're really focusing on long-term care. It's a subject that, like, oh, who wants to talk about long-term care? But you know, long-term care is basically a lot of times as we get older, sometimes it could be some form of dementia. Sometimes it could be our inability to take care of ourselves, you know, eat for ourselves, bathe, dress, and all that goes along with that. And we need help, sometimes at home, sometimes in nursing homes, and Medicare will pay for a very little, very little amount of that, and it's typically in the form of rehab, short-term care. Um, and there used to be more gray areas. I remember years ago, my aunt was in a rehab facility in Winston-Salem, and she was there for 2 months. And she really wasn't getting better. We really knew that she was not going to be able to come back home and live the life she had lived. But Medicare paid for those first 2 months. Fast forward to today, that would not have happened. 20 days, maybe, 3 or 4 weeks, but Medicare has cut out those gray areas, and rarely do they pay more than 2 or 3 weeks. The goal tonight is to understand the gaps in your options. So let me go ahead and let me share my screen here. Right here. Let's see. Let me get to my slideshow. All right. Hopefully that shows up pretty well for you. So again, every week we're doing tackling a different portion of this pie of what I've called the optimized retirement, health, basically protecting your health, securing your wealth, and then we're really showing people as well. A big part of what we're doing more and more these days is showing people how to generate protected, guaranteed income. Tonight is we're really talking about health. My name again is Brad Rhodes. I always encourage people to get my book. A lot of people are telling me this book has really helped them in retirement. I always talk about this book, some of these books I read when I was younger that put me on a really good path, how to save for retirement. I've never had a 401k, being self-employed. So I read some books, some really simple concepts that really helped me. And so this book, Protecting Your Retirement, I'm humbled that it has become an Amazon bestseller. You can get it on Amazon if you would like, but if you ask me or come see me at our office, I give those books out all the time. I've got plenty of them. Okay, so let's jump right in. Here is the presentation. It's a pretty short presentation, but very important. So here we go. Okay, tonight's presentation is titled What Medicare Doesn't Cover. the healthcare expenses you may have to pay yourself. Depending on the type of Medicare plan you may have a Medicare supplement, or you may have a Medicare Advantage plan. You may have to pay for dental, vision, hearing, and for sure, long-term care. You know, most people understand that Medicare is an important part of retirement. But one of the biggest misconceptions I hear is that once you turn 65 and have Medicare, your health care is essentially covered. Well, tonight I want to talk about some of the things that Medicare does not cover. And I'm going to admit to you, I'm going to spend some extra time on the biggest one, long-term care, because this is an expense that could potentially have a major impact on your retirement savings and income. Now, I want to make a quick distinction here, as I mentioned just a second ago. Depending on the type of Medicare coverage you have, when it comes to the first three, dental, vision, hearing, it can make a big difference. So this is an illustration I show to most everybody, especially when I'm first meeting with them, to make sure they understand that there's a difference. You can have original Medicare and get one of these Medicare supplement plans, or you get a Medicare Advantage plan. Both of these have their pluses and minuses. Some of the advantages with the Medicare Advantage plan, some of these are zero premium plans. A lot of them have dental, vision, and hearing covered. But the negative with the Medicare Advantage plans, if you had some health issues, you could end up paying a lot of copays on the back end. Now, Medicare supplements are popular because between Medicare and a Medicare supplement, the coverage is excellent. You basically have a $283 deductible at the beginning of each year, but for things like hospital stays, doctor visits, outpatient surgeries, things like that, Medicare and Medicare supplements do a great job. But again, the big thing I want to get across to you is that neither of them are going to pay for long-term care. Also, a Medicare supplement, as we're going to talk about in this next slide here, I kind of got ahead of myself, but you know, Medicare does a great job for hospital stays, doctor visits, medical procedures, diagnostic services like EKGs and CAT scans. So if you've got a Medicare and Medicare supplement, they do a great job. Even if you've got a Medicare Advantage plan, and I do a lot of these separate hospital indemnity or cancer plans that pick up where the Medicare Advantage plan leaves off, you've really got pretty good coverage. And I want to make a little distinction right down here, talking about skilled medical care or skilled nursing. Here is a major distinction I want to make sure you understand. Medicare and these Medicare Advantage plans do a good job for skilled care, skilled nursing. Skilled nursing defined by Medicare is rehabilitation. So I'll give you an example. We had a lady at our church. She fell and broke her femur, that big bone in the leg. Well, she spent 3 weeks in a rehab facility, and her Medicare plan, I think, paid the bulk of everything for her. But the difference was this was short-term rehab, basically getting her to a point where she could go back home and resume her normal lifestyle. Medicare does not cover someone who has to spend months or years in a nursing home. That's the big distinction I want to make. So let's get into it. We're first going to talk about dental, vision, and hearing. And I'm going to skip kind of to the bottom of the screen. First, it says some Medicare Advantage plans may provide dental. And when we get to the other screens, it's going to say the same thing. Some Medicare plans may provide dental. They may provide vision, and they may provide some help with the copays for hearing aids. But when we're talking about original Medicare and these Medicare supplement plans, they do not cover your typical dental. Vision as well. Original Medicare and these Medicare supplements do not cover vision care, routine eyeglasses, or eye exams, eyeglasses, or contacts. Now, yeah, if you had a cataract surgery, of course, it does pay for that because that falls under medical. But when we're talking about routine glasses and whatnot, these Medicare and original Medicare supplements do not pay for that. Again, some of these Medicare Advantage plans, they do pay for vision care. Same with hearing. Original Medicare does not cover hearing, hearing exams or hearing aids, but some of these Medicare Advantage plans they do cover some of it, not the whole thing, but they will help you with the cost of a hearing aid or hearing exams. So what I want to get to here is long-term care. Now, this is the big one. This is where I think retirees need to pay particular attention. There's a huge difference between medical care and custodial care. If you need a doctor, surgery, medication, or other medically necessary treatment, Medicare can help with those things. But what if you reach a point where you need someone to help you get dressed, take a shower, prepare meals, or simply get through your daily routine? Now, that's a different type of care. And Medicare generally does not pay for ongoing custodial long-term care. Again, this is one of the biggest gaps in retirement healthcare planning. I'm not going to get into it in this particular presentation. Other countries, there are some countries that cover all this for you. Now, I would probably say what I've heard is that those tax rates are a lot higher in those countries. But as we speak, as of today, Medicare in the United States does not cover long-term care. Medicare covers short-term skilled care. But again, as I mentioned earlier, that's very different from long-term care. It's incomplete. Medicare can cover skilled nursing or rehab services after qualifying hospitalization, subject to Medicare's rules, but that's not the same thing as Medicare paying for someone to live in a nursing home for years because they need help with everyday activities. So remember that distinction. Medicare may help you recover. It generally does not pay for long-term custodial care. So what are the odds? And I don't bring this up to scare you. I'm just, hopefully this comes across as just me educating you. These are the odds. About 7 out of 10 of us, basically when you turn 65, are expected to need some type of long-term care during their lifetime. It can be at home, assisted living, nursing home. Again, needing long-term care does not necessarily mean spending years in a nursing home. Some people may need a few months at home. They may need, 5 or 6 months, a year or two. But again, some people, like I think about my aunt, this has been some years back, but my aunt, she had some savings. She had to be in a nursing home for the last 3 years of her life. And in those 3 years, she went through everything she had spent her whole life saving. It was gone. So who pays when Medicare doesn't pay? This is really the question I want everybody to think about. If you need long-term care and Medicare is not going to pay for that care, who's going to pay for it? Maybe it's your savings, maybe home equity. Sometimes it falls on the children. Now, some people have purchased long-term care insurance. In a couple of weeks, we're going to really dive into a strategy that a lot of people are using that's a little bit different from your typical old-fashioned long-term care insurance. I had a client I recently spoke with. She had a long-term care, one of these traditional long-term care insurance policies that she had paid on for years. And I'm talking to her daughter, and we were talking about me helping her with the long-term care claim. Well, she passed away shortly thereafter. And, we're glad that she did not have to spend a lot of time in a nursing home. But that insurance she took out so many years ago, it was kind of wasted money she spent. She never used it. So there are new strategies that we're using to help cover the issue of long-term care. And there isn't one right answer for everybody. But I would argue that the wrong answer is we'll figure it out when it happens. Because if it does happen, you're going to have much fewer choices than you have today. So I want to finish with this. My goal tonight, of course, I don't want to scare anybody. It's actually the opposite. I want you to be aware of these things before they become problems. You spent 30 or 40 years accumulating money for retirement. You've planned for plan your investment strategies. You've planned for Social Security. You've planned your income. But healthcare can be one of the largest expenses you face in retirement. So the question is not just simply, do I have Medicare? The better question is, do I have a plan for the things Medicare does not cover? If you're approaching Medicare or you've been on Medicare for years and you'd like to know where you have the gaps, I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and take a look at this. We'll look at what you have, what Medicare covers, what it doesn't cover, and what options may be available to help fill those gaps. The goal is not to try to predict what will happen. The goal is to be prepared for what could happen. So again, my name is Brad Rhodes. I've been doing this for a lot of years. Let's take 15 minutes to find out. Don't wait until you need the coverage to find out you don't have it. So I'm going to finish up with this presentation. Thanks for your time. All right. Whoops. Let me move forward here. Okay, so as always, if you want to have a discussion, 10, 15-minute call, feel free to call me. My thing might be cut off up here. I don't know if my video is on top of the phone number, but our phone number is 336-746-4729. Call our office, get on our schedule, be glad to talk to you. You can always go to my website, bradroachfinancial.com, go to the contact portion up here on the website. It'll take you over here. You can fill this out, or you can simply set up a time on the calendar. It will alert me, and I will call you at the appropriate time. Again, long-term care, let me back up. Long-term care is one of those things that a lot of people put off or don't want to think about. I get it. But there are some new strategies. In a couple of weeks, I'm going to jump ahead here. On August 27th, we're going to be talking about something called asset-based long-term care gaining in popularity. It is what we call a niche product, meaning it's not for everyone, but a certain type of person, it can really work out well. But next week is very generic. We're titling it Protecting Your Retirement. I may or may not do a full presentation next week. It may be a short presentation. But nonetheless, we will be talking about protecting your retirement. So as always, I appreciate you joining me. Oh, it keeps clicking over there. Sorry about that. I can't quite get my mouse to work properly tonight. If you have any questions at any time, feel free to give us a call. I appreciate your time. Hope you have a great rest of the evening. Take care.